here's my first video delving into the advanced mechanics that are behind RuneScape's combat. I'm hoping to dispel the confusion by explaining these mechanics in a way that everybody can understand, clearing up misconceptions and leading to a greater understanding of combat overall. We'll be going over 4 chapters to explain how these auto attacks work. Chapters 3 and 4 are going to be in the second installation of this 2-part video series on auto attacks. Chapter 0, Ticks. Before we go into how auto attacks work, I'll explain how ticks work in case you didn't know. Every action in RuneScape is counted in ticks. A tick is 0.6 seconds and is the smallest amount of time an action can occur in. For instance, when you run, your character is moving 2 tiles per tick, and when your character is walking, they are moving 1 tile per tick. Also, you could use an ability every 3 ticks. This is called global ability cooldown. This is also the reason some interfaces are a bit laggy. They do some things in 0.6 seconds intervals. The tick is the absolute backbone of the game, and I will be referencing it throughout the video. Chapter 1, the 3 basic rules. The first rule is that abilities that damage the enemy put auto attacks on cooldown. So abilities such as Sonic Wave, Cleave, Snapshot, etc. all abide by this rule. This also means that abilities that don't damage the enemy do not put auto attacks on cooldown. For instance, Anticipation, Freedom, Resonance, etc. In addition, non-bleed abilities that do multiple hits, aka channels, will reset the cooldown every time they hit. For instance, Asphyxiate, Assault, Destroy, Rapid Fire, etc. Rule number 2. Auto attacks don't put abilities on cooldown. Auto attacks don't affect the global ability cooldown. They're separate from it, so they won't delay an ability coming out. However, if you are using an unbound auto attack, pretty much everything that's magic, you can't use an auto attack as the same tick as your ability. This is because your ability takes priority over the auto attack. So if you try to auto attack and use an ability in the same tick, just the ability will come out. I'll explain this a little bit further in chapter 2. Rule number 3. The slower the weapon, the heavier it hits. There are 3 different weapon speeds. You have fastest, which autos every 4 ticks, fast, which autos every 5 ticks, and average, that autos every 6 ticks. When you use an ability with these weapons, your auto attack will go on different cooldowns depending on the speed of your weapon. Now, it's important to understand that the weapon speed doesn't affect how much damage your abilities do. It's just tied to how long your auto attacks go on cooldown and how much your auto attacks deal. So let's take a look at Drygor Longswords versus Drygor Maces. And even though they have different speeds, you can see that their abilities do the same amount of damage. But if you keep going, you can see that the auto attack cooldown on the Longsword takes longer than the Maces, but the Longswords deal more damage. One last note. Auto attacks by 2-handed weapons will deal significantly more than auto attacks of main-handed weapons. So if you're ever going to auto attack, you should have a 2-handed weapon equipped when the auto attack goes off. Chapter number 2, the 3 rules in depth. Rule number 1. Let me explain this graphically to you. Let's say we're using Ascension crossbows. They have the fastest speed, so they're going to have a 4-tick cooldown. In this scenario, we'll cast Needle Strike, then Anticipate, then Piercing Shot. All these dots on the screen are individual ticks. Let's run it. Blue dots are the ones representing the auto attack cooldown. So I cast Needle Strike, and 2 ticks later I cast Anticipation. Anticipation is not a damaging ability, so it doesn't affect our auto attack cooldown. 2 ticks later, my auto attack cooldown is up. In reality, the auto attack is being cast on this tick, but it doesn't hit until the next tick. Now we're going to be going into some of the exceptions behind Rule 1. Rule exceptions, ultimates. Most abilities will fit under this cookie cutter rule, but there are some outliers. Damage boosting abilities such as Sunshine, Death Swiftness, Berserk, and Metamorphosis all don't reset the auto attack cooldown, so they're like defenses. This is because the game doesn't categorize them under the damage dealing categories such as Cleave, Sonic Wave, etc., even though Death Swiftness and Sunshine have a bleed effect, and the others straight up boost your damage. Rule exceptions number 2, Freedom. Freedom is a pretty unique ability. When it is cast, it takes your offhand auto attack off of cooldown, which allows you to get more damage than just a regular defensive, as well as some extra adrenaline from your offhand auto attack. I won't be delving into offhand autos really in this video, because they serve absolutely no practical purpose outside of the Freedom ability. You may hear people recommending using a Drygor Longsword / Rapier as your offhand, and a Drygor Mace as your main hand. This is because you can benefit from the fastest speed of your main hand, and when you use Freedom, you could benefit from the fast speed of your offhand, therefore dealing slightly more damage than an offhand Drygor Mace would. Rule exception number 3, Special Attacks. All special attacks will put auto attacks on cooldown based on the attack speed of the main hand you're holding, even if they don't damage the enemy, like the Dragon Battle Axe or Staff of Light special attack. However, there are 2 exceptions. First, the Zaros Godsword. The Zaros Godsword's special attack pretty much acts as a defensive, and will allow you to auto after you cast it. As you can see here, I'm using both the Zaros Godsword and the Anticipate ability at the same time. Their auto attacks hit at the same time. Second, the Eldritch Crossbow. The Eldritch Crossbow special attack is unique. It delays your auto attack by a tick. So if you want to use a fastest ability before it, so 4 ticks of cooldown, it turns that into 5 ticks of cooldown. Let's look at this from a practical standpoint. If you cast Needle Strike with your Ascensions, then ECV spec right after, you won't get an auto attack before your next ability after the ECV spec. You'll have to wait a tick. Rule number 2. Auto attacks won't delay an ability. However, in certain circumstances, you may want to wait to use an ability so an auto attack can come out. This usually happens with melee, where you'll use a dual wield ability like Decimate, wait 2 ticks after the global cooldown, then use another ability. We'll pull up the same diagram we used to explain the defensive autos with ranged. We'll use Decimate, and then 4 ticks later our auto attack is off cooldown. However, it will take a tick to cast, which is a total of 5 ticks for you to have to wait. Now, magic is a bit special when it comes to auto attacks. This is because you're able to bind an auto attack. Pretty much with melee, if you tried to have an ability and an auto attack come off on the same tick, the ability would take priority and the auto attack won't come out. This is why you can't 4-tick auto attack in melee or ranged. But because you're able to tell the game that you want to auto attack before you cast an ability on the same tick, by keybinding an auto attack, you're able to cast your auto attack on tick 4, as well as your ability. In Chapter 3, I'll be explaining how to practically use this information to 4-tick auto attack. On to Rule 3. Let's take a look at this chart real quick. This is the average damage dealt by tier 92 weapons of different speeds and of different hands. You can see that the 2H abilities deal significantly more damage than their main hand counterparts. If you take a quick look, you could also see the around 20% damage increase of using an offhand Drygor Rapier / Longsword on your offhand autos instead of a Drygor Mace when you freed them. To be clear, this is a 20% increase in the offhand auto attack damage, not damage overall. Thank you all for watching part 1 of 2 videos where I detail the mechanics behind auto attacks. In the next video, I'll be going over how to practically use all of this information, as well as going into the advanced mechanics, such as 4-tick auto attacking, dark bow 5-tick auto attacking, mage range continuous 4-tick auto attacking, etc. It's going to be a blast. See you there.